I said, we
Yeah.
didn't have these, we had.
Good morning, everyone. It being just after 9 o'clock on
Morning,
Wednesday,
Mr. Sturgis.
on Wednesday, November 9th. Let's call together the
Gary Jones on one.
Kane County Human Services Committee.
Allen, Bates,
Here.
Davist,
Davis here.
Iqbal,
Iqbal present.
Kenyon,
Here.
Lewis,
Lewis here.
Sturgis.
Sturgis here.
You have quorum.
Mr. Davis, can I have approval of the minutes from October 12th, 2022?
So moved.
Second by
Second.
Lewis. Any comments? Questions?
In general or on the minutes?
No, on the minutes themselves. That'd be great. Call the roll on that, please.
Bates,
Bates, yes.
Davist,
Davis, yes.
Iqbal,
Iqbal, yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Lewis, yes.
Sturgis.
Sturgis, yes.
Passes.
I see no one in the room for comments. Blair, do you have anybody online? Thank you. This morning's agenda, I don't believe that we have anything that we are voting on. Correct?
Correct.
Okay, so this is very a lighter agenda. We do have a couple of items at the bottom that we're going to go through, but we should be able to get through this pretty easily today. So monthly financial reports, I do not have on the agenda that they are placed on file. Can I make that assumption?
Yes.
Do we have anybody from finance online?
Nothing different happened with the reports. If something is missing off the agenda, it's
Okay.
probably because we're using a new system this month and
Okay, thank you for the clarity.
When we get down there to number 9, we'll put them on file.
Woo-hoo. Got it. Yeah, how do we put them on file if there was no report, right? Exactly. Item 5, Department of Human Resource Management, Jamie.
thank you. I'm going to get started here with the monthly Blue Cross Blue Shield invoice. Very standard, up the middle amount, nothing out of tolerance there. Blue Cross.
1.4 seems to be the new number.
It is about 1.4, 1.5 seems to be about where we're running this year.
Okay, and I just, because I thought we were downwards of like 1.2, 1.27, and we seem to be just up a little bit. Is there?
So that was last year, and that is probably the expected increase in health costs.
Okay,
And what we did build in as far as an increase and everything. So it is higher this year than it was last year. But that seems to be our new normal is about 1.4, 1.5.
and are we clear on of the, I think we had, I'm going by memory, 3 or 4 larger COVID related losses. Have those, is that through the clearinghouse? Are we past that? If I'm characterizing that right?
To my knowledge, those were in 20 and 21, but we don't monitor individual claims. If
I
we
only bring
have-
it up because they were large, they were substantial.
They were large, right? We had a few large long-term hospitalizations as a result of COVID. To my knowledge, those are all resolved. If there've been any new ones, I don't necessarily know because we do look at those reports at year end when we're looking
Okay,
at
so we
rates.
don't know if any of those, if at all, are playing into the slight uptick.
Right. I'm not aware that any are involved in the current. I think 1.4, 1.5. I think that's just our normal this year.
Okay. And also before we leave this, I know that we were just completing budgets. But on the information and documentation that I saw in the budget presentation from Mr. Onsick the other day, I thought I saw the health insurance reserve fund upwards of just over 8 million, 8.5 million did we make a structural change to say we don't want, good morning, Deb, to say that we don't want to be at that 9 million, which was an arbitrary number set a few years ago, and that we're going to bring that down to a substantially lower number, but I don't have the lower number.
I believe the lower number is about 5 million.
Okay.
That's a round number. We did get new methodology for determining how much our health insurance reserve fund should be from our broker and worked with finance to help determine that amount. So when we determined rates, Our rates to maintain the health insurance fund was about a 13.9% increase in rates. We actually dropped that down to balance to goal that reserve fund at about 5 million. So we actually probably will be taking money. We're planned to take money from reserves next year with our rates. So we'll have to see how the year plays out, but we expect to have to use some reserves this year as well as next year to reach that goal level. So that's built in and planned for us to take some money out of reserves.
So just so the committee understands that, 3 years ago, when we embarked on this journey, we said $9 million. Totally arbitrary number. There was no methodology involved with that. The powers that be have stepped in and said that number's too tall. And now that we've encroached on that faster than we thought we might, we need to back it down. So while we say we're taking from reserve, we're not taking from reserve out of necessity. Quite the opposite. We have too much reserves that we need to pare down to reach some of the union expectations so that they don't feel as if we're charging too much for our health insurance because you have excessive reserves. Am I characterizing that okay?
Yes, that's correct. And part of the reason that we had to make that adjustment was when we were with IPBC, we used to pay in arrears. So we used to pay after the month. We now no longer pay as far in arrears. So that's part of the reason we don't need as much reserve. So again, all of that was on recommendation as a best practice from our broker, a calculation method for determining how much is the proper amount of reserve. And so we're targeting that amount that he's recommending.
Perfect. Thank you.
Well,
Any other questions on that?
We didn't have a method yet. And the last thing we wanted to do was aim low and then have to announce to everybody, oh, by the way,
Oopsie.
yeah, we didn't put enough aside. So
Right. This is the
we did
appropriate
it the right
step
way.
based
And
on
we
the
had to wait
professionals. Yep.
for budget process, end of year, all, what actually happens, what the experience was. Now we have a formula and yeah, we overshot, but it was the right.
It's a good problem to have. Right.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
thanks, Jamie.
The next slide is the Blue Cross MERP enrollees. If you see MERP's at 67, so that's up a ways.
That's the highest I've seen it.
That is the highest I've seen it. So we must have had some recent new hire enrollees. So it's still a popular program. Assured Partners report, and this is where it kind of gets back into what we were talking about. If you look at that first 2020, we put $500,000 into reserves that year as we were building the claim history that goes into that formula. So we were aiming high that year. If you go to the next year, next slide to 2021. We then took from reserves. So again, we're building our history so that we can make better estimates. And then if you go forward 2022, we balance pretty close to. So we're a little bit under, but again, that's a planned use of reserves
Mhm.
to help get us towards that goal.
And again, for the committee on this, I remember just because of the election last night and in the cyclical pattern of this, I remember when we didn't have this data. When this committee started, we said, this is the data that we need to be articulate and make informed decisions. And look at us now as if we've always had this. We didn't always have this. And it took a merger of Mike's company with a larger firm to be able to dial analytics in like this to make informed decisions. And this is so, we are so far along. Let's just put it that way.
Just another thing I wanted to point out just from health insurance costs, as a general note, that orange band that's kind of near the bottom represents prescription claims. And if you go back a couple slides, you'll see that prescription claims have nearly doubled over the last 2 years. So that is a large contributor to the increase in insurance costs.
Thank you.
Do we know why that would go up so much?
It has a lot to do with specialty drugs. Unfortunately, we are not able to get specifics on prescription claim information from our HMO participants, which represent about 2/3 of our participants. So we are really not able to drill down and address a cause. So that's something that's a piece of information that we would like to get Blue Cross to participate in providing to us that we're currently not able to get. So that's something we're looking at going forward.
And Mavis, to go one step further, this is, when you look at our data, this is the spike. It's in the prescription drug. And I mean, and it's not a little blip, it's a sizable blip. So
I don't understand that it doubled. It looks like it went from
If you go back to
69 to 490.
So if you go back to the 2020 tracker, where was I looking at? Where I was seeing
Thank you.
$200,000. I must have followed the wrong line.
Oh, okay.
It's gone up significantly. I'm sorry, I'm looking at a black and white copy and I must have followed the wrong copy on that one.
Nobody suspects pharmaceutical company greed, do they?
no, not.
We've been
not at
watching it
all.
climb, so. It's heavily in the specialty drugs, some of which are $10,000 a
Blew
month.
that out.
Okay.
Yeah,
Thank you. There.
Mavis, it's significant. So,
Mhm.
and we have looked at the form, excuse me, the formulary for the prescription drug. And we've asked Assured Partners, if we're with Blue Cross, can we just change who the prescription drug provider is
Mhm.
and modify that formulary? And they've sort of come back and said, no, that's not within our purview. Where I think that maybe 5 years ago, that may have been within something we could do. But anyhow,
I ran into a recent wrinkle that was kind of surprising, which was the formulary was authorized by insurance and therefore would cover it. The generic form, they did not like. So instead of $60, which is still a pretty good chunk for it was 400. Because
I mean,
they did not cover the generic one. Approve it.
sort of runs
They're gonna get you one way or another.
counterintuitive, doesn't
Yes,
it? So,
yeah.
Anyhow, thank you. Monthly applicants and staff changes?
There's really nothing out of tolerance here. We do have about 30 positions open with the county right now, but generally speaking, we're getting good applications. The new hire report looks very lengthy, but really that's a lot of election workers. So that's just part of the season. So we did process a lot of election worker new hires. So
Jamie, at the last meeting, it was pointed out that one of our offices seemingly has a much taller spike in turnover than others. And as the election and the new board is seated, I would very much like to shine a light on that and begin some dialogue and interviews with, was it the Juvenile Justice Center?
it was. And we did actually meet following that. So Madam Chair and I, along with Commissioner Molina of Judicial and Public Safety, met with Chief Judge Hull, Director Lisa Oust, who is Director of Court Services, and Mike Davis, who's the Superintendent of the JJC, to really talk about that. They do have extremely good detailed information. They do an exit interview with their staff about why they're leaving. Money definitely was a part of it, given that the facility right down the street starts people at about 10,000 more. But it wasn't the only thing. There's actually a lot of people leaving the profession. They stated it is a high burnout position. And I think I mentioned that last month when we talked. So we talked about different ways to help their retention, and part of it is money. Part of it also, Mike Davis had some excellent suggestions at ways we can help. One of them being offering some mental health services to those staff people, particularly after an incident. So they have an incident or an altercation. Sometimes that results in an injury, and then offering them those immediate mental health services that, right now, all they have is their mental health clinician that works with their juveniles. And having an actual coworker participating in that role isn't as effective as having outside services available to them. So that's one of the things that he proposed that I think is a great idea. It does come with a cost, but really in terms of the cost of turnover, it's not a significant cost. So we are looking further into those options and seeing what we can do to help that. It will always be a high turnover position because it is so demanding. But I think there's a lot we can do to make it better for the staff that we have when we have them.
I think as legislators, it's one thing for somebody to poke a hole and say, or point a finger and say, there's where the problem is. If we don't do anything about it after we're aware of it, then shame on us. And so if the light has been shined there, I appreciate your efforts. And if you could keep us abreast, if there's something, I mean, I hope we go out of the box, and I realize that that's probably an extremely thankless job, but if there's something that we can do that we can lift ourselves above the norm or above the average, I mean, please bring it to us for consideration rather than dismissing it. And let's try and make an impact and try and make a difference here.
And I think that's exactly what happened, starting here at that last meeting. This isn't a new problem to the staff over there. They have these detailed exit interviews because they're aware that it's such a struggle to keep staff. So they have had their own spotlight on this for a long time. And I think they're happy to see that the board is now aware of this and looking to help correct that problem. They're a fantastic staff over there that do a lot to be, they're using their own personal resources to say thank you to these staff all the time and trying to do everything they can. And they've got a lot of great programs over there to help retain staff. But I think there's a few things that the county can do, like that mental health treatment that can really help improve that experience.
Thank you so much. Mavis?
Do we need more staff?
We talked about that, and that's not the problem. They are constantly hiring. So it's not that they need more slots added. They can't really fill the slots they have.
But would that be good if we?
More slots isn't going to help them, but more hiring probably would. So they have plenty of
Yeah,
budgeted positions.
The number of people isn't necessarily
Correct.
that's a job I had once in life. So
Uh-huh.
I've chewed the dirt of that trail, and it was getting people to show up. They had authorization to hire, and so these problems have not changed in a long time because I was a young man when I did that, and the mental, yeah, I was then, yeah. If you had a good supervisor, a good YS4 that understood some of the dynamics, they'd bring you an ice pack and buy you a beer after your shift. That was the mental health treatment that you got for having a rough day there. And it hasn't changed. And it's been quite a few years.
One might suggest that's not the worst treatment in the world.
It was not
Right,
bad.
right.
That was actually one of the best supervisors I had. He understood. He came up through the ranks. And while that sounds maybe oversimplified, something like that, just, a human reaching out, knowing that you'd had, a terrible shift or a rough day or an altercation or, yeah, that kind of thing goes a long way.
Anita?
Yeah, two things. Did they indicate anything? Is this like the same problems that the IYC has? I know you just said that they pay a lot more, but do they have the same turnover rates over there?
They do have high turnover rates there as well. And actually, Mike Davis reached out to some of the other counties who have it even worse. We actually, if I can forward resources if you're interested. He did send me some of our state audits and reports, and we really have the best facility in the state.
Yeah.
So it's a problem that everybody's facing.
Yeah, I have no doubt because I've been over there and it is great.
Mhm.
But I do, and it is a hard, I'm sure
You're
that.
still dealing with teenagers no matter what.
Yeah, well, I know,
wherever you-
I know, you sure are. And that's the other
not
thing.
Model ones.
Really? That's not who's in JJC?
Right? Go figure.
Would you stop? I'm trying to talk. And then I think the other thing is, did we have any breakout of whether those people are leaving on the education side or on the, what do you call the other side? We have education over there and then we have the people that are the babysitters,
Corrections,
the corrections people. Yeah.
nose counting.
It's a mix. So I think, what they have is, some people are leaving that job market completely. So they're not going to corrections, they're not going to juvenile education. They're, at this point for a job that I think they say starts at 46-ish, don't quote me on that, mid-40s. You're looking at, they can get a job, answering phones and pushing paper for that. So I think that there's some people, I think you really have to have a passion to continue to do that work. So, I think it's a matter of, doing everything we can for them while they're here working for us.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely good discussion. Thank you for following up.
And,
with that.
and truly, my point of the dialogue was to make sure that the committee members understand we just don't talk about this and then close the door and go to the next meeting. We actually do follow up and try and bring the data back when we can. And I'm derelict in acknowledging in the audience today, Christine is here listening just a bit. We kind of feel that, if anybody should ever be out sick, we should always have somebody in, as a backup. She gets to see Jamie in action. Christine is number
Rich
2.
Childs, who is the president of our fourth reserve district.
You have it muted? So I mean, it's very important that Christine sees Jamie does have to think on her feet sometimes. And although we script this stuff pretty well, it's not. And if you always just be genuine and honest, what we're doing, if we miss something, we apologize and we'll correct it. But it's always with the best intention and with the most cards up that we could possibly be to make sure that we're addressing the issues that we see. So thank you for being here and coming down today. Jamie, so sorry.
Not a problem. Any other questions on the new hires and terminations?
Item E, if I could take and ask you to maybe not go through the entire report, but recap if you can. We had the proverbial fire drill, and Rich came down and said, congratulations, you're $100,000 less than you were last week. And that just doesn't happen often. So we will take that as a win.
Yes.
And if you could
he's
kind of give
excellent,
us,
and he never gives up, and he doesn't just take the quote he gets. He beats them down as much as he can, and he saves us every penny he can. And it's fantastic. So yeah, it does go down to the wire, but that time is well used by Rich to get us the best possible rate. I think a big takeaway from this is, although we do have higher rates than we did last year, that is not because they've increased our rates. Our rates are flat. What has increased is the size of the county, in that we have more property, we have more buildings, we have more staff, we have more payroll. All of those increase the basis for what our insurance is determined on. So those increases are based on an increase in the size of the county.
does everybody understand that? There's 2 points here that I think are critical. The first one is Rich Ryan is not commissioned. He is a flat fee professional that does the work and he does a yeoman's job. To come back, if you remember in this committee just 3 or 4 years ago, we were lucky to find somebody that would offer us insurance. 47 of 50 vendors declined us. And today, yesterday, Rich walked in and said, not only do we have carriers that want you, your rates remained the same. That is, and I get it. You could say, well, they didn't go down. Are you kidding me? The rest of the world has gone up enormously. We kept our rate flat. The overall cost is up, but that's because we increased our payroll. That's because the cost of rebuilding our structures has increased, not the rate that we're being charged to do that. And that is just a flat out major win. And I just can't say, we get these RFQs and RFPs for our professionals. And I oftentimes have asked you guys to take a leap of faith with me. Rich is one of these people that the leap of faith is based on data. He just, gosh darn, does a great job for us. And if he's listening today, we owe him a debt of gratitude because the journey has been 4 years and he's done a great job.
I want to add too that we did RFP that broker service earlier this year because we had to, it was time by purchasing rules. And he not only does what he does extremely well, he does it for the lowest cost of the people that we got proposals from.
And that is not an understatement, that you shouldn't take that lightly. He is amazing. And I shouldn't say he is the tip of the spear. I mean, his firm and the reputation they have and what they do for us. On the other hand, I do want to give accolades to this board who oftentimes has said, wait, rather than make a knee-jerk response, let's look at this from a different perspective and say, well, we want to stand on our laurels and do this because ethically it's the right thing to do. Listen to our professionals, and if it's time to settle. If it's time to fight. And I just appreciate everybody, the cultural change in some of this, and now we're reaping the reward from it. So I can't say thank you enough. Sorry, Jamie. Employee wellness program.
As we've talked a little bit before, we talked when we went away with the wellness rate.
What a
Suspended
great
that
graphic.
for this year. You
What a
like that?
great graphic.
That I mentioned that we were looking at adding a few new wellness programs. One of the
Good.
the first of which is in place of that in-person biometric screening that we used to do. We are still looking at transitioning to an opportunity for employees to see their doctor for a well visit. The county would not take any data from that. We're not specifying which tests, if any, the employee has done, but simply that they have a well visit with their physician to achieve that wellness rate. So we are still working out the details of that because we need to make sure that we're okay with the union contracts and everything is in place. So we plan to still be rolling that out, and we are working with the state's attorney and Laner Muchin on that as far as the union side. So just to let you know, that's still in progress, and we're hoping to implement that for the 2024 rates. Something we can do now, and something I'm hoping you'll agree, this is a great program. The program that's up on the screen, this is called Wonder. This is something that our brokers identified as being a good program for us. It's not just a weight loss program, it's a lifestyle change program. So they work with people, it ends up, so it's something an employee would be able to voluntarily sign up for if they are interested. It's my intention not to limit it to people of a certain BMI, but to open it to any employee who's on our insurance, who's interested in participating, where it just goes through different lifestyle changes to help for long-term wellness. There's other similar programs out there available commercially for individuals like Noom or anything like that. If you heard of it, it's very similar to that. This would be at no cost to the employee, and it would process as a claim cost through our insurance. So the cost of the program would just be a regular claim, similar to an office visit. And the employee signs up, they get some materials, including a scale for weighing food and some plans. So it doesn't use points. It doesn't restrict, large groups of food. It really is about how to eat healthy for life. And I think it's a great program, and I'd like to include that starting January 1st. I've talked with Blue Cross. It's just it's just something they turn on, turn off. It doesn't require any change in our health plans or anything that requires board approval. I just wanted to make you guys aware and get a general consensus if everyone thinks it's a good plan to offer our employees on our insurance.
Does anybody have any concerns with doing this?
I was just trying to follow the cleverness in the why we left out the E.
I'm reading the same thing. This is why we left the E.
Because there's no
In
E in
Wonder.
doctor or clinician.
I don't get it.
There's no sense there.
There's no E in doctor or clinician, so we left, I don't know.
This is
but
why
there's
we
E in
left off
team.
the E.
It's a team of them, and there's an
No,
E in
it's
team.
not.
I don't get it.
I don't get it.
I don't get it either, but it's okay.
Yeah, but it's a great program. So just finish your donut, okay?
So they-
Love that it says
You don't
Wonder,
either, but I have plenty now.
formerly Naturally Slim, as
But
we're all
we were
sitting here with our
wondering-
donuts and.
We were wondering which of the three of us you were looking
Yeah,
at.
oh, There was a lot of focus right over here.
Yeah, she's like
It was
looking at the three of
oh,
us.
thank you.
Sorry, Mike, I had to
It's all
include you.
Yeah, well,
Amy, thank you. I think you have consensus to move with that.
Okay.
Yeah, it's
Um,
great.
Another thing we're doing towards wellness is the staff have been establishing a wellness committee with people from the different departments to all work together as far as possibly doing some challenges. We might be adding a walker tracker, which is a great app that helps people do challenges. It's pretty popular, it's pretty widespread, so I think a lot of people will be familiar with it. So we will be adding different things like that through this committee throughout the year, based on what it seems the employees are interested in doing. So we are really trying to step up our wellness game in the next year. Any questions?
Good to go.
Thoughts, comments? Okay. Next up is the training. I just want to say thank
Dr.
you.
Silva has her hand up.
Oh, I don't see that. Oh,
Good morning.
that's in the way. Hi, Dr. Silva.
Good morning, Mr. Chairperson. Just a quick question regarding that. What a wonderful program. I read about that in my email, and I meant to ask some questions about it, but they've all been answered today. One other question that I have, does Blue Cross have anything where we can offer a gym discount to our staff?
What kind, a gym discount? They do have that program set up. So I can send you some materials if you want. They have a wellness program where you can get
I think it's like 20, is that the $29?
It's like
And they can get into
$29
a
a
bunch of the
month.
different health clubs. It's Dr. Silva, it's really quite nice,
Mhm.
a benefit. It is through Blue Cross. If we change providers or something, that would disappear, but I think the Blue Cross model is actually quite good, and you could, and if I'm not mistaken, it allows them to go to multiple gyms.
It does. They pick a tiering, I think, and the cost of it, there's 3 tiers, and it's like, the basic gets you, things like the Planet Fitnesses and those entry gyms. And then the more you spend, the more comprehensive of your gym, and you play a flat rate per month to Blue Cross, and you get kind of a membership. You can go to any of the gyms in that tier.
Wonderful. I would love to hear more about that and promote it more within our staff and also become more involved with the wellness program. Thank you, Director Lobrillo and
Thank
Mr. Chairperson.
Thank you. And if you figure out what the E thing meant, let us know. Maybe you need a degree to figure it, because I just still don't get it. So,
I'm a little in the dark over here, but if I do, I will, I promise.
thank you. Okay, are we past the training reports? Or are we? into the
I just
training?
wanted to say thank you. We've got everyone done for sexual harassment from the board. So the board's good, done.
Oh, we have to start again though.
You do have to start again in January, but you know what? If you
Couple of
do it in
months, yeah.
January, you won't see me stalking you with forms anymore.
Okay, let's move on to the ethics ordinance update.
Yes, thank you. So I talked to Vince Coyle, Assistant State's Attorney, who has been working on this because the state's attorney was very, very swamped with some important things that have been going on with the board. He did draft the next step in the ethics ordinance, which is the portion looking at campaign contributions. However, it had not been vetted by management in the state's attorney's office, so he wasn't ready to present it. But he did give me some updates, and he will be here next month with that draft for your approval. Just wanted to let you guys know that there is a state statute that governs campaign contributions. Unlike some statutes which allow for the county to set rules that are more restrictive than the statute, this one actually does not provide for that. It offers really no flexibility for the county. So the draft that is presented will be an exact mirror of the state statute. Vince added that DuPage County recently went through this process and actually went quite detailed into whether or not they have an option to make it more restrictive than the state statute, and ultimately determined that there's no flexibility and you really have to just mirror the state statute. So he'll be presenting that next month, but it does not appear there's gonna be a whole lot of flexibility. It's pretty much all decided by the state.
Just to some great degree, if I may, Mo, you have really taken the lead on this one, acting as our liaison with Vince. Are
Yeah, sure.
are you okay to continue with that in these next process?
Yeah, I'll continue on,
Okay, thank you so much.
regardless of whether serve on the committee or not.
Understood, but just for continuity's sake,
Yes.
Dr. Iqbal, having a law degree, I think speaks the same language in Vince and really, Mo, you get into the weeds on this and it's appreciated. I just wanted to say that.
No
So,
problem there.
Thank
yeah.
you so much. Okay, so we don't have any update or action needed on that, correct?
No, he'll be here next month with that draft,
Okay.
for your approval of that
And
section.
and just for the record, I think Vince has really done a great job as a newer member of the team. He's trial by fire. We threw him right in and yeah, I
Vince is
think
good,
he's,
yeah.
he's learned to swim pretty quick, so. Okay, exit interviews, item 8, new business.
So this is something that the committee, we've talked about a few times. So I.
Christine gonna present this one?
No, I've got this one. So with exit interviews, I did work with IT regarding a methodology for this. This actually uses a Google form. And I included what that Google form looks like. So I wrote these questions and answers. And so I didn't know if the committee had any feedback regarding these questions. I did also send this out to all the department heads for their feedback. And there were a couple of things that they really would like some, just any comments on whether or not the committee feels that this should be anonymous or not. I did put it out originally as anonymous. Some of the problems with anonymous, so there's some pros and cons both way. I mean, pros, no one has to worry about, being held accountable for their comments, so they'll be more likely to be honest, some people believe. I'm not entirely sure that that's our main priority. I think our main priority is if we have something we need to address, we really need to know who said it and what department they're working for in order to effectively address it. So I've kind of gone back and forth and I've settled on, I'm of the opinion that we will just get an email address and they don't have to collect their actual name. Some email addresses are clear, but we'll at least collect an email address from those people so that if we do need to follow up, we can. In a lot of cases, we don't have so much turnover that we might not, ultimately be able to tell who it was anyway. And I think people will know that. So I don't know that they will feel anonymous anyway, and they shouldn't be worried about any kind of consequences for their comments, considering they no longer work for us. Right. So it will go to their personal email account so that it does not have to be done from a county server. So they can do it from any computer. So they will be able to do it after they no longer work here if they'd like.
So I'm, hang on, so I'm just, and I don't want to belabor this, but I'm just a bit confused. It's by anonymous, you're saying that you will send this to an employee afterwards and you won't know who the respondent is? When we said exit interviews, I was kind of thinking, hey, if you want your last paycheck, you come up to Human Services and we're going to have a little conversation so we know what's going on.
Right. You can't actually do that.
Okay.
Right. So we really have to have them be willing, right? So we will send this to them as soon as we get notice that they've terminated, and we will set up a process with the county departments to please let us know as soon as they give notice. As it is right now, Human Resources doesn't usually know someone has terminated until they're gone. When we get their final payroll form terminating their employment, which is typically on or after their last day. So we will address with the departments to please notify us as soon as they have resigned to their position so that we can forward this to both their county and.
How does that
personnel.
usually go? Is that done at the department portion and then they send it to that portion to finance to say, turn them off?
Right.
And then you're like a month later, how does that?
So the current process is if an employee were to resign with a department, they would give notice to their department, their supervisor or department, who would then tell their payroll coordinator, who would follow any departmental procedure for collecting things like ID cards and keys and equipment. And they would do that within their department. On or after their last day, they would write a payroll action form, which terminates them in payroll. And they would send that first to Human Resources, but that typically occurs on or after their last.
Why
day.
wouldn't you be included way up front on that?
That's just hasn't been the process of the county. So that's one of the things we're looking at changing.
Change that process.
Right. And I think it'll change fairly smoothly. I don't believe any of our departments will object to that. It's just not currently a part of the process. So we will have them notify us as soon as they receive a resignation, and then we will separately reach out to the employee via this email form, which also asks them if they would like an in-person discussion with human resources representative. So that's one of the questions on it. And then these responses will come directly to us. They will not go to the department.
When you say us, on your team, who handles that?
Well, we haven't assigned that yet because it's not a current process, but I believe they will probably come directly to me to
And
review.
please, for the committee, understand this is not a witch hunt in any way, shape or form, because in so many instances, this can easily become, I hated my supervisor and now this is my time for retribution. That's not the point of this. The point is to say, we're sorry you're leaving. What could we have done to keep you? Is that the spirit?
And that is, if you read through the questions, it's really the spirit. Although if they have an issue, they can freeform type whatever they want, but understand we've been doing this a long time, and you can, you're gonna take all of those comments, along with the totality of the situation. So, in no circumstances, some single disgruntled employee going to leave and shake. the
Well,
whole
I've
business
But you
heard-
get one back that's got, mismatched letters clipped from magazines, and the answer should probably be a little.
Who are you today?
He's the guy that worked at juvenile justice.
That's
You
right.
already know that.
Anita,
But as to the issue of anonymity,
no
I mean,
no
if-
more caffeine for you.
if we want the greatest value from this, and the goal is not to single anybody out, to shame them, to embarrass them, it's to find out, as you said, Cliff,
What could we have
what
done?
could we have done differently? What about this did not work for you, and what things did work for you? It sounds like there's already a protocol within each department. If somebody's going to leave, there's a certain methodology to, you got to turn this in, do this, do this, do this. If this form becomes part of that procedure, now we're addressing it much closer to the time that it's happening, which is probably, it's still fresh in their
More
minds.
relevant, right?
And I think that gives us a tool, that it makes this tool more effective if we get it to them sooner and get it back sooner.
This is
So-
all a process improvement.
Yeah. it's
Agreed,
just,
agreed. Anita, you have a comment?
So, I totally believe in exit interviews. And I like the fact that we're sending it to a personal email address afterwards. Because a lot of people, when they leave, they are a little paranoid, especially if they're leaving because they had an issue with somebody. And a lot of people will leave and they won't even tell you where they're going because they're afraid that you're going to call somebody and, people get real paranoid. So I love the fact that it is after the fact that we're doing this, you're going to get more honest feedback. But I want to make sure that somehow we capture what department, not so much the person, but what department. So we know that, if we're having issues, with
loses
us-
the value. in it.
yeah,
We don't know
exactly,
where-
exactly. Now, if it's a department of two people, they might not want to do that, but a bigger department, I think that's a definitely value to kind of track that.
And
And you're right, the individual responses, if somebody says, I left because of Cliff, well, we expect that. We'll take that into account, I mean.
okay, so,
Love in this room. Mavis?
yeah, one response doesn't have to be looked into, but if we could get a pattern of responses, then that's what we're looking for, right?
And
Is-
Mavis, the goal here would be, and Jamie, whoever is chairing the committee and whoever serves on the committee for next term, I'm hoping that in 6 months, you would begin bringing some of the data back for review, and within 12 months, that we actually have enough data to begin to look and say, wow, it wasn't all
Can you
about
put that
money.
form up again? Can you put the form up again?
Blair, can you put the form up?
I don't know who asked you to take it down, but.
I think in an effort to balance, we do need to collect that department data, what department they're from, so that we can identify
Yeah.
patterns if there's a pattern. And even if the pattern is just this department doesn't pay enough, it's still a pattern, and knowing which department would be beneficial. So we do have a specific question in there where we ask what department it is. And we will collect the email address. So if someone makes some kind of allegation that is serious in nature,
Go back to the
and
first
does
page.
not include the department, Because someone could fill in the blank and say, I'd rather not say, we really can't force them to fill in the
Right.
blank accurately. If someone does make some kind of allegation, which is serious, which I'm not anticipating that to be, this would unlikely be the format in which they would make a statement like that. They would probably request an in-person discussion if they had something serious to address.
Yeah.
But if someone did state something on here that required follow-up, I would have their email address to reach out to them.
Right. But what I liked was the very first question, because this will be where we get our data. Did you leave because of money, work hours, locations? This will give us some data that, where we will know, oh, most of our people leave for money, or most of our people leave because of the work environment or whatever. So it will actually give us some data that we can kind of pinpoint some problems. So I think that's excellent to start it off that way.
Mhm.
And even if people don't further go and put in a lot of comments, that's the one I think most want to capture anyway.
I might suggest just on this one that rather than saying mark only one, maybe if there's more than one, you might ask that they rank them.
Oh, that's a good idea.
Part of the reason I did that is, what you
It
want to
just
know
food
is their
for thought.
main reason. So someone may have left because they were unhappy with their work environment, such as their hours, or, if you're looking at the JJC and they're this really high stress job, they may have left for that reason, but they may have also said, well, and money too. I think my goal in doing that was to know what's the main reason, like what got them out there looking for another job. That's going to be our biggest problem. So I mean, if you want it off, we'll take it off. I just really wanted to know what's driving that person to be picking up the want ads, and looking for another job. We also could add a second question that says, were any other factors contributing, and give them an option to mark
You're doing great. I
secondary.
think this is a great starting point. In 6 months, let's review and pivot if we
Yeah.
need to. So thank you for being so responsive to this.
Yeah. I was very impressed you got it back here the very next month.
This
I
is
was like,
starting up.
I was like, this woman's amazing. Let's keep her. Thank you.
Yeah, starting.
Thank you, Blair.
something New and from scratch. That's
Mr. Davis, can I have a motion to place reports on file?
So moved. Second.
Mr. Iqbal seconds. Is an all in favor sort of thing, or is that a?
What's a roll call?
So now that we,
Allen,
Ellen, I.
Bates,
I.
Davis,
that was yes.
Iqbal,
Yes.
Kenyon,
Yes.
Lewis,
Louis, yes.
Surges.
Surges, yes.
I have a question. I think this is old business, but I missed my turn.
Oh, no, please.
Oh, no,
Thank
I
you.
turned on something. That's okay? No.
There you go.
In your study about our rate of pay and the number of people who are leaving King County compared to other counties, I believe you found that our rate of leaving is about the same as other counties' rates of leaving, or was ours higher? Because theoretically, if we think we're paying less, the hypothesis would be that we would have more people leaving. Is that right? Or
So the numbers were based on the county as a whole. And as a whole, we were fairly consistent. Understand that when I broke that down by department, I noticed some departments had extremely high rates, some departments had extremely low rates. So I think we really have to look at this on a department by department basis, because we don't have that internal equity, which says every department is using the same scale or the same comparative methods to determine how to pay staff. As we go through these equity adjustments, that's the primary goal, to make sure every county department is on a level playing field. And then we will raise and lower the county as a whole as needed to address things, or the board will, have an option to look at that and make adjustments to the county as a whole, because we will have that level playing field established.
because that's going to be very important data for budgeting this year.
So
right?
Mavis, if I can, the data that we derived indicated an approximate $700,000 first year adjustment on a 3-year plan.
Yeah.
In the budget, if you recall, we did bump that to 900,000 for first year, just giving a little bit of discretionary funding,
Mhm,
just in case our analysis was wrong.
right.
If we find a pocket that we may have tripped over and wasn't as precise as possible, we did leave a bit of discretionary there. that Madam Chair and I had negotiated through saying, let's make sure we have that built in if need be.
Okay.
But we did, I mean, by and large, we were okay. Listing from top to bottom, someone's getting a lot, someone's not. We tried our, you know, in what we had to work with, we did the best we could. I think it's actually quite solid. Added a little bit of discretionary there in case we found a donut hole that we needed to plug. And I, you know, I look forward to reaching back in a year and saying, you know, well done, or whoops. Okay, let's correct that a little bit. So Jamie, am I accurate on that? as
Right,
well?
yeah, I think the takeaway from that is some departments are solid and some departments are bleeding a little. And I think we've got this, you know, plan, the $900,000 a year over 3 years to help, you know, patch the places that need patching and distribute that in a way such that we can bring everybody to that same level.
Thank you. That's a great question. And anybody else, anything for
You're
committee?
welcome.
All right, I see no need for executive session this morning. So Mr. Kenyon, I believe you are teed up.
I'd like to motion we adjourn. Second.
Second by Mr. Iqbal, all in favor?
Aye.